All right, my name is Nate Richardson. I'm going to share some work I've done on joke quotes and logic against evolution. This is a non-denominational presentation by Nate Richardson. Share this here. So, evolution, one theory to rule them all. And science, evolution, what's in common? Nothing. What if I told you that everything you ever learned about evolution was wrong? Again, I'm Nate Richardson. RichardsonStudies.com is where I share all this stuff. And getting into this, most of what I'll talk about today is found in this little book called Not Quite Evolved: Jokes, Quotes, and Facts on the Scientific and Religious Problems with Evolution Theory, Non-Denominational Edition. So you can get this book at minimal printing cost on Amazon. It costs $10.85 to get a copy of that. 200 pages, color, basically pocket size, and lots of fun stuff in there. So check that out, richardsonstudies.com, or use that QR code. Another book that I wanted to mention that I came out with recently on the science religion topic, in the non-denominational um, nature, is this book highlighting Dr. Kent Hovind's seminars. Dr. Dino Battles Evolution Theory, highlights and commentary on the legendary creation science seminars of Dr. Kent Hovind, non-denominational edition. So again, you can get this in paperback. It's 170 pages, 5x8 size in color. It's on Amazon. Minimal print cost is $9.99, or richardsonstudies.com. You can get the document for free. Same with the other book. And you can use this QR code. So this also includes some of my commentary on his work of a non-denominational nature, and I separate what I had to say in purple, so it's really easy to see in different paragraphs. So Hovind's 7 seminars that he's taught all around the world for decades. Really amazing stuff. So now you've got it boiled down into a neat little booklet. Okay, part 1 here. Common ancestor, missing link, and hominids. Bad haircut, kinda ugly, must be a hominid. Here's some bogus Neanderthal finds. Piltdown Man, jawbone of an orangutan with fragments of a modern human skull. It was praised as the missing link for 40 years before the hoax was discovered. 500 academic journal articles were written on it. Nebraska Man was used as evidence for evolution for a long time. All they had from him was one tooth. Later they found it was a tooth from a pig. Hilton Man's jaw was broken and the teeth filed down to fool people, but it was in textbooks for decades until proved a fraud in the 50s. Lucy was discovered by someone 2 weeks from running out of grant money to discover the missing link of evolution. The fossil record, okay, in this quote here from the academic world, the fossil record has been described as a chaos of anthropological nomenclature, and critics have deemed the conventions of human paleontology particularly permissive. Here's something interesting. A 2004 Indonesian 3'7" hobbit pygmy skull showing Lucy a fraud. This is similar to the size of the famous 1974 Lucy skeleton in Africa that researchers say is 3.2 million years old. These bones are not mineralized like Lucy, and researchers have claimed dates of only several thousand years. Pygmy relatives who live just a half-mile from the cave have documented photographic evidence of their ancestors who shared physical characteristics with the remains found in the cave. Crossing a canyon analogy, no evidence of transitional species. What if someone were to tell you they jumped across this canyon? Crazy. But what if they said, well, there were buttes that I jumped between and it took me 50 years to do it? And you say, well, I don't see any buttes that you could jump between to cross that chasm. And they said, well, the buttes are gone now. You can't see them anymore. So there are unbridgeable chasms even at the smallest levels of life. Darwin Black Box, a book by Michael Behe, talks about this analogy. This is akin to what the evolutionists are claiming. There's all these transitional species, but where are they? We don't even know. Well, they're out there somewhere. Punctuated equilibrium is the term they use, suggesting that long periods of stasis or no change occurred between somewhat rapid periods of change. How about the bag of marbles analogy? This one's from Stephen Meyer's Darwin's Doubt book. Transitional species and a common ancestor? This bag has all the colors of the rainbow, they claim. think of transitional species from a common ancestor to the modern human. They say the bag has all the intermediate colors between all of the colors. But after pulling many marbles out, I only get the same 3 colors. We know by now that these intermediate species don't exist. There is no common ancestor. There are no intermediate species. They're missing way too many links. Okay. Now, a few more quotes. Charles Darwin, the geological record is far more imperfect than most geologists believe. And Henry Gee, the human family of species are arranged in an orderly procession from primitive forms up to modern man, but such scenarios are subjective and unscientific. And William Harcourt Smith, anthropologist in the American Museum of Natural History, says, "We have a desire to see the story of bipedalism as a linear, progressive thing, but evolution doesn't evolve toward anything. It's a messy affair full of diversity and dead ends." And David Berlinski, educator and former professor at Columbia University, says, "A detailed and continuous record of transition between species is missing. Those neat sedimentary layers, as Gould noted time and again, never revealing precisely the phenomena that Darwin proposed to explain. Most of the fossil record does not support a strictly gradualistic account, precisely what Darwin's theory demands." Are these your human-like ancestors? This gentleman's got a crooked back, kyphosis, or maybe scoliosis. Don't judge me because I'm different. More on Lucy. Is this your human-like ancestor? The guy who found Lucy was an atheist who cheated on his wife. Lucy was found over a 2-mile radius. They put white eyes on it like humans. They put on feet with human toes all pointing forward. Was Lucy a baboon? Some say that it has the jaw of a baboon and the hip was broken and ground to make it walk upright. The person who discovered Lucy's skeleton was 2 weeks from running out of grant money to discover the missing link of evolution. They named it Lucy because they were listening to the Beatles song Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds about LSD. They say the bones of Lucy are slightly bigger than normal, which proves it's becoming human, but this is not good logic. There are various animals with certain breeds having larger bones than others. The St. Louis Zoo put human feet bones on Lucy, but not one foot or hand bone was found for Lucy. Fashion show. You select the skin color, eye color, hair length, body hair, nose shape, muscle mass, fat content. This is all the stuff they're making up for these hominid claims. Hey, this science needs more data. Tree of Life. There's placeholder names used for intermediates when nothing is found. This image here comes from Universal Model Science, Volume 2. This is a non-denominational textbook recently published with thousands of citations and quotes from the academic journals to prove the foolishness of evolution and so forth. So why don't the inner branches have names? This phylogenetic tree of life is supposedly all the modern species and their ancestors linking back to the common ancestor of all living animals and humans, but these inner branches don't have names because they do not exist. Someone has said, a phylogenetic tree represents a hypothesis of the order in which evolutionary events are assumed to have occurred. You only have names of species on the outer layer because there are no intermediate species. How about the great evolution experiment of dogs? We've breeded dogs for thousands of years. And all we get is dogs. How about the law of reversion? If left alone, divergent breeds will revert to their natural ancestral organism when bred with natural stock. You can get all these strange looking pigeons, but they're all pigeons, and left alone, they're just going to be like the normal stock. These are pictures from the Universal Model textbook again. Henry Gee, In Search of Deep Time, says, at no point does the breeder produce a breed of pigeon that is so extreme that one can no longer consider a pigeon. Endless varieties can be produced, but in no case are new species formed. Okay, close quote. And again, Henry Gee, you cannot connect one fossil with any other to form a narrative. Well, and Henry Gee is a well-known paleontologist and senior editor of Nature, Europe's most popular scientific journal. And that's from his book In Search of Deep Time. Now here's a question, but what if we wait millions of years? Well, the answer to that is a set of ideas. This is Stephen Jay Gould, says a set of ideas that cannot in principle be falsified is not science. In other words, Okay, waiting millions of years? We can't do that in a lab, so sorry. That's not science. How about the enlarged brow ridge? This is common today. Also, consider that pre-flood people who lived longer likely developed larger brow ridges as it never stops growing. Also, consider that the chewing muscles pull on the bones and it changes the shape of the skull. Those who do bodybuilding know that not just the muscle mass changes, but the bones change. We all came from a common ancestor. We have shared traits. All the professors agree. But we're still looking for the common link, missing link. It's okay, guys, we found the missing link, says Gollum as he hurls to his doom with the precious ring. If monkeys became humans, why do we still have monkeys? Are they all the retarded monkeys? The cat dog. Where's the intermediate species? There should be thousands. You don't see these cat dogs walking around, do you? So much for common ancestor and intermediate species. How about Archaeopteryx? Is this the transition between a reptile into a bird? Actually, it's just a bird. Consider that the platypus is even more unique. It has fur, lays eggs, is a mammal, nurses, chews food with plates rather than teeth, and it's not considered a transitional species. How about the fact that other modern birds have claws on their wings, like the Hoatzin of South America, the Turaco of Africa, and the ostrich? How about the fact that some modern birds have teeth, like the gray-legged goose, the merganser, the double-toothed kite, etc.? There are no transitional fossils for any modern birds have the same level. We've found modern birds at the same level and below Archaeopteryx. So they've had to say this is not what we're looking for. We belong. God is creative. Okay, there's no scales becoming feathers. Here's some quotes on this topic. Evolution scientist P. Moody acknowledges that it's nothing strange for a bird to have teeth. He says, quote, however, other extinct ancient birds had teeth, and every other category of vertebrates contains some organisms with teeth and some without. Amphibians, reptiles, extinct birds, mammals, etc. Close quote. Here is another evolutionist, J. Ostrom. Is Archaeopteryx really a transitional fossil? There are modern birds in the same Jurassic period as well as modern birds before this period. One evolutionist admits, this is J. Ostrom, he says, quote, it is obvious that we must now look for the ancestors of flying birds in a period of time much older than that which Archaeopteryx lived. Close quote. One evolutionist textbook plainly admitted that the entire field of bird evolution is speculative. Quote, the origin of birds is largely a matter of deduction. There is no fossil evidence for the stages through which the remarkable change from reptile to bird was achieved. Close quote. Remarkable indeed. How about vestigial structures, things we don't need anymore? Well, there are none. We keep discovering immune functions, etc., for all human organs. There are no intermediate organs either. The human coccyx supports weight, supports muscle, and helps balance. The whale pelvis is essential for reproduction. By the way, Darwin said he envisioned a polar bear could turn into a whale. And a plant biologist said that the whale pelvis is the most convincing evidence he was aware of for evolution. Apparently nothing in his own field of study was convincing as that. Formerly vestigial, now understood. At one time, evolutionists listed 180 vestigial structures in the human body. In the past, three structures were routinely surgically removed and discarded. Today it is now recognized that every one of these structures in the human body serves a purpose. Things once working in organisms can break down. Fish living in a cave may, after a period of time, lose their sight, etc. But considering human life, each of these structures, once claimed to be vestigial, has shown to have function or purpose. These are, so I should be saying where these are from. The first one here was Darrow Clarence and William J. Bryan. And the next one was Dr. Jerry Bergman. And this one I just did was, again, Dr. Jerry Bergman and George Howe. And finally, it is said by some that in the distinct past, these structures had different or greater functionality, and evidence of the past function is claimed by an appeal to other living creatures which may have a similar structure that do have greater or different functions. Such arrangements are circular reasoning because it is assumed that the evolutionary history is already demonstrated. Yep, we're still here. After 45,000 generations, bacteria are still bacteria. If these things didn't change, why would humans evolve to a different species in just 2,000 generations? They won't show modern animals with dinosaur displays though they are found together in nature. Here we've got fossils of the crawfish, of the wasp, of the fern, still like their modern counterparts. These are some pictures from the Universal Model Science textbook. I'm just saying the similarities are there. Species must change. Try 4 million years. Square and round hole. Not going to happen. But we haven't waited millions of years. Yep, that's not science. Here's Kamala Harris. Evolution unburdened by a lack of evidence. And let me just say, obviously she didn't say that. These are jokes, okay? And okay, science blows up. Shouldn't have pushed evolution so hard. It's from the Chernobyl disaster. Okay, species must change. Try 4 million years. Change across species? No, speculative. Change within species? Yes, demonstrable. Hominid skulls and skulls of monkeys and people. Corporate needs you to find the differences between this picture and this picture. They're the same picture. Hominid skulls, skulls of monkeys, they're the same thing. How about these pictures? Can you find the difference? The ancient evolving horse bones and the modern horse bones of various breeds. Again, they're the same picture. Oh, look, we've finally found the missing link between ancient horses and modern horses. How about the embryo? This image is from the Evolution Cruncher book. Are these gill slits? No, there is no openings, there is no fluid exchange, there is no extraction of oxygen from water. They are not breathing through these things. These are simple pouches. Pharyngeal throat pouches for the thymus gland, parathyroid's middle ear canal. Is this a yolk sac? Tail? Okay, this is not a yolk sac. This is blood-forming sac of the first blood cells. Is that a tail? No, it's the coccyx muscle attachment. Is used with that. I had a conversation with a lady at the pet store the other day. Told her about this stuff, about there's no gills and all this. And she said, I've been lied to. Amen, sister, you have been lied to. She said, I thought we had some kind of a mermaid ancestor. Well, let me tell you, we have something better for you than that. We are children of God. How about homologies? So, textbooks on evolution, tip of the iceberg. Problems with evolution, the vast majority. Genes don't align with homologies. Similar looks doesn't always align with similar genes. Homology, a concept in crisis, was Jonathan Wells and Paul Nelson summarized when they said, quote, non-homologous structures are produced by organisms with supposedly homologous genes, but organisms with different genes can also produce similar structures. So just because your bone, your hand, and your dog's hand have some similarities doesn't mean they're from the common ancestor. Here's some more jokes for us. He's still alive. Silence all opposition immediately. It's tax funding. Evolution's scientific viability. Dying. Again, Miss Harris is here. Evolution unburdened by a monopoly on science. Here we go to the Lord Tolkien's story. His words question evolution. The board finds your study unacceptable. Here we are to the Star Wars story. Please let creation be taught, not just evolution. Well, those negotiations were short. Part 2. Genetics, probability, and radiometric dating. The chances of amino acids randomly forming themselves into proteins to create life are about 1 in some huge number bigger than Google. So you're telling me there's a chance. Time allowed for evolving. Math says no. Add more time. Genetics for dummies. There are limits to every species. Here's the king and I. You're only going to accept radiometric dates which align with pre-established geologic column? Naturally, this is what I shall have intended to do. Evolutionists admit. This one is okay. T. Save Soderberg and Ingrid U. Olson evolutionists admitting, quote, if a carbon-14 date supports our theories, we put it in the main text. If it does not entirely contradict them, we put it in a footnote. And if it is completely out of date, we just drop it. You can't get published in our journals. Maybe you should have thought of that before you became peasants. Real science versus evolutionary science. The majority of radiocarbon dates are deemed unacceptable. J. Ogden III, in The Use and Abuse of Radiocarbon, in the Annals of the New York Academy of Science, says, "It may come as a shock to some, but fewer than 50% of the radiocarbon dates from geological and archaeological samples in northeastern North America have been adopted as acceptable by investigators." Close quote. One does not simply randomly mutate new genes. And here's this lovely mouse. Radiocarbon dated living rats are negative 260 to 2,139 years old. Never mind that they only live like a year. Try sending two of the same sample in different bags a few months apart. You'll get different answers on the date of the rock. Try sending the same rock, two different pieces, two different bags. You'll get different dates. Try sending a rock which you don't tell them it's a dinosaur bone. They refuse to use carbon dating on the dino fossils due to the narrative of dinos being too old. How about DNA showing a recent Eve? Mitochondrial Eve in the Tree Journal says, if molecular evolution is really neutral at these sites, a high mutation rate would indicate that Eve lived about 6,500 years ago, a figure clearly incompatible with current theories on human origins. Close quote. Not so incompatible with the Bible. Again, this is a Universal Model textbook quote and picture. Radiometric dating issues. Here's this fun little joke about the Pharisees rejecting Jesus. Most people rejected his message. I built the earth in 7 days without evolution. Shut up! Billions of years was the temple of this earth in the making, and he saith in 7 days it was built? They hated Jesus because he told them the truth. All right, so let's talk about some assumptions of radiometric dating. How much carbon is initially present? Don't know. Did argon leak in or out? Don't know. Is the decay rate constant? Don't know. Has the atmosphere always been the same? Don't know. Have catastrophic events influenced timetables? Don't know. And folks, if we can't tell what the weather will be in 1 week, why do we think we know the environment of a billion years ago? Part 3, social implications. Someone should kill the weaker races. You're joking. For the good of humanity. God used evolution, survival of the fittest. So, here we throw around evolution. Do we really know what that implies? It's not pretty. And this gentleman finds out evolution explains everything. Wait, scientific racism is the theme of Charles Darwin's book, 1902, Favored Races. His book's called The Origin of Species by Means of Natural Selection, or The Preservation of Favored Races in the Struggle for Life. Darwinism is the key to death cults. Richard Weikart, author of From Darwin to Hitler, Evolutionary Ethics, Eugenics, and Racism in Germany, and Darwinian Racism, How Darwinism Influenced Hitler, Nazism, and White Nationalism, says, quote, examining Hitler's ideology, the official biology curriculum, the writings of Nazi anthropologists, and Nazi periodicals, we find that Nazi radical theorists did indeed embrace human and racial evolution. They not only taught that humans had evolved from primates, but they believed the Aryan or Nordic race had evolved to a higher level than other races because of the harsh climatic conditions that influenced natural selection. They also claimed that Darwinism underpinned specific elements of Nazi racial ideology, including racial inequality and the necessity of the racial struggle for existence and collectivism. Close quote. Darwin's philosophy caused the world wars. Mao Zedong, the greatest killer of all time, used evolution to justify his work, too. He said, quote, the foundation of Chinese socialism rests on Darwin and the theory of evolution, close quote. So, evolution in kids' books, arch tyrants taking over the world. How about treating man as animal? Here's Oda Benga. He was caged at the Bronx Zoo, where he came to be exhibited in the zoo's monkey house as part of a display intended to promote the concepts of human evolution and scientific racism, representing the lowest form of human development. You can read that on the Oda Benga Wikipedia page. And he stayed in there until a Baptist preacher complained and got him let go. And he ended up killing himself from being driven literally insane. You know, you put in a cage with monkeys, you're going to go insane. I love our ability to classify. It makes us so much better than the lower races. Yikes. How do you explain your horrific act of violence? I identify as a hominid animal whose morals have not yet emerged. Emerged. It's always emerging. Here we go back to Star Wars. We do not approve of your evolution theory. But everybody's teaching it these days. Grant you the rank of master, we do not. And then the little children. What are you going to teach us? Evolution. Survival of the fittest, and you ain't gonna survive. Here we go. Just sacrificed my life to keep communists out of America, and my kids promote communism. And here we go again. Anakin installed evolution as dictator of all science. What have I done? Here we go. Nature's evidence for a creator. And the paradigm of evolution, the grand organizing principle. Chaos. Okay, here we go. Mom, he says it's survival of the fittest. I don't think so. Part 3. Dogma, bias, schools, and journals. Make science fair again. How about that? In China, you can question Darwin, but not the government. And in the US, you can question the government, but not Darwin. I don't remember if that was Jonathan Wells or Stephen Meyer who taught about that in one of their books. Question evolution? No publish for you. Here we go to the Ten Commandments movie, Cecil DeMille. Publish me in your journals. Silence my opposition. Advance me in the algorithms. Give me all that I ask, and I'll give you a monopoly on science. Here's a vicious cycle. Kids learn evolution. Adults learn evolution. Researchers publish evolution. Evolution is all anyone sees. Here we have some wrestlers. Evolution is trash, but everybody agrees it's true. Nobody's proved it. We don't need proof. We've published. That's not how science works. Here we have the, what do you call this guy? Sad guy versus the Chad guy. Evolution is supported by thousands of scientists. Geocentrism was supported by thousands of scientists. And a little bit of Scooby-Doo. Well, we finally got him, gang. Let's see who's behind evolution. Money. It's over, Professor. I have the facts. You underestimate my funding. Back to the king and I. You're going to present evolution as the only possibility? Naturally, this is what I shall have intended to do. Occasionally, a biology textbook will bring up intelligent design only to say there's no evidence for it and it's just based on the Bible. But of course, they don't let students view any of the materials defending intelligent design scientifically. Jonathan Wells talks about this in the Politically Incorrect Guide to Darwinism book. Here we have Moses being challenged by the musicians of Pharaoh's court. Endless tax dollars to uphold evolution. Leagues of lawyers to stop any teacher who questions evolution in the schools. And there's Moses, ridiculed for pointing out obvious flaws in evolution. You're playing with the big boys now. And here we have the Goliath of academic journals versus the David of creation truth. Egypt's mandatory public schools teach evolution. Let the children go. In the early 2000s, Kansas took macroevolution, as in species change, people from monkeys, out of their biology curriculum. So we're all okay with the bird's beak getting longer, etc. That's been proven, but the other has not. Evolutionists got together and made it so those high school credits wouldn't count toward graduation. Jonathan Wells talks about this in the Politically Incorrect Guide to Darwinism. Evolution in kids' books, key to taking over the galaxy. The hills are alive with evidence for creation. How do you solve a problem like creation research? Shut it down. Honest researchers, I don't think evolution is scientifically viable. Establishment, I find your lack of faith disturbing. Evolution, everybody, versus intelligent design. Another variation, fun variation of this meme is conservative professors, right? Almost none of them. Okay, how about evolution is a historic science. We don't use experimentation. This gentleman, author Ernst Mayr, delivered a lecture after receiving the Crawford Prize from the Royal Swedish Academy of Science. He said, quote, evolutionary biology, in contrast with physics and chemistry, is a historical science. The evolutionist attempts to explain events and processes that have already taken place. Laws and experiments are inappropriate techniques for the explication of such events and processes, close quote. And biochemist Michael Behe in Darwin's Black Box afterward says, quote, all science begins with speculation, only Darwinism ends with it, close quote. All right, how about the Smithsonian? Here we are. Creationism is religion. So is evolution. Okay, the Smithsonian. The Smithsonian was going, this is again from Jonathan Wells in the Politically Incorrect Guide to Darwinism. The Smithsonian was going to have a show where they talked about evolution and drew a philosophical opinion from it that the cosmos must be designed for a reason. Evolutionists everywhere were outraged and got the Smithsonian to cancel the show. The Smithsonian said they decided to cancel the show because, upon further analysis, they concluded that such a show would not be in keeping with the mission of the Smithsonian. The Smithsonian was fine with mixing in philosophy with their science when it came to philosophies that they say there's nothing in the universe and we're all there is in the cosmos. But if you ever want to suggest a possibility of a philosophy that there might be something of design in the universe and purpose, they don't allow that. When the Smithsonian considered airing the show, one evolutionist tried bribing the Smithsonian with $20,000 to not play the film. A critic of evolution heard about this, called the guy, and threatened to show the movie in Europe unless he paid him $20,000 also. All right, moving on. Science is observable, testable, repeatable, falsifiable. But millions of years of evolution, this is not observable, not testable, not repeatable, not falsifiable. It is more of a religion, as in an interest, a belief, or an activity that is very important to a person or group. Here we are with real science versus evolutionary science. How about journals? Michael Behe and other scientists trying to publish intelligent design academic papers in scientific journals are denied. They say it's not scientific because it's not published in journals, and they won't publish it because it's not scientific, because it can't be found in academic journals. About circular reasoning, folks. If it's not in an academic journal, it never happened. This is what Jonathan Wells points out in the Politically Incorrect Guide to Darwinism. Here we have a little encounter with the stormtroopers. You there, aren't you the one teaching creation science? I'm not the one teaching falsehood. Go back to your journals. Go ahead, we'll go back to our journals. And here we have Moses. You want the truth? You can't handle the truth. How about silencing teachers? Again, Jonathan Wells in the Politically Incorrect Guide to Darwinism says a public high school teacher named DeHart mentioned the possibility of intelligent design in his school, and the school board approved of it. He didn't put forth his opinion, he just pointed out that there was another possibility, and the ACLU crushed him, ending his career as a public teacher. Creationist public school teachers wearing a mask of being happy about saying evolution is accepted by many scientists today, while they know it's trash. Here we have this little child drowning. The evolution gets plenty of attention from the public school, but not the creation, not creation. And of course, the conservative professors, they're chained down at the bottom of the ocean. Here's this gentleman getting shot by this beast. Again, with Tolkien's story, caught teaching creation science. And here he comes with a fourth arrow for him, just in case he still wants to teach creation science. Evolution is now orthodox. Your new orthodoxy is disturbing. One does not simply publish evidence against evolution in academic journals. And here's a little encounter with the father and daughter. Honey, evolution is just popular among professors. But aren't they the ones that matter? How about smart people disagreeing with evolution? To demonstrate there is controversy in science today about evolution, consider groups such as Dissent from Darwinism, which is at dissentfromdarwinism.org. Their site features a series of scientists who openly express their view that natural selection, which is the heart of Darwinian evolution, is wholly insufficient to explain natural processes. The site features a researcher who had written a textbook on evolution who said, quote, students at least should have the opportunity to learn about the flaws and limits of Darwin's theory while they are learning about the theory's strongest claims. Close quote. Here we have the King of the Hill, and I wouldn't recommend this show. And some of these memes are just popular and funny because people are familiar with them, but I'm not saying I endorse all of the shows they are. Anyway, so here's this boy. He says, evolution is one of several theories. Dad comes along, tears the message down. The evidence supports Darwinism. If those kids could read, they'd be very upset. Teacher keeps talking about evolution like it's a fact. We all know it's a theory. Evolution isn't just a theory, it's an established theory. Evolution, it's all they ever knew. Taught evolution in school, not any better than the kids on the streets. When you try to take evolution out of the schools, goes, all right, here's a nice little continuum. little bell curve. Here we have the goes to public school, believes in nothing. And then you've got the average kid, goes to public school, believes in evolution. And then you've got the super intelligent kid, homeschooled, knows 100 reasons why evolution doesn't work. The world right now on fire. And then you have the mothers homeschooling their children. Oh, when you ask homeschooled kids problems with evolution, they all know. Here we have Professor Higgins struggling with teaching his student. I've grown accustomed to being fun of for being being made fun of for being a creationist. And when your kid finally understands that evolution is fake news. Unashamed. So you're saying you don't accept evolution? I don't, and I'm done pretending I do. And here we have Mr. Vader again. You are no longer allowed to publish intelligent design research. Fine, we'll make our own journals. Professors sitting around all day writing articles for evolution on tax dollars versus that guy who has a day job but exposes evolution on evenings and weekends. I'm tired, boss. Evolution is evil. To me, creation is evil. Then you truly are lost. Here we have the young lad, interested in science, highly skilled, confused about conflicting theories, and finally joins the dark side, evolutionist. Okay, a little bit more on religion to finish up. The big picture of modern science. This graph here, this little diagram, helpful summary from the Universal Model Science textbooks. We go from nothing to Big Bang to chemicals. Those are things, Einstein relativity has influenced a lot of that. There's a lot of problems with that. And then Darwin will come in and help get us the rest of the way. Bacteria becoming ape-like, becoming human. This is the big picture of modern science. Nothing made the humans. Okay? As in, nothing exploded. It rained on rocks. A chemical soup formed. The soup came alive. The living soup bred with other living soup. Slime became tiny animals. Tiny animals became big animals. Big animals became humans. Here's the implications of modern science. There's no need for God because God isn't real, right? So God isn't real because you don't need him. Like Lavoisier said of phlogiston, let's see, and Davy said of caloric. These are two scientific theories that died out because you can prove nature, you can demonstrate things without them, and so you don't really need them. So if you can show that nature came here without God, you don't really need him, so he probably isn't real. Okay, well, this is what evolution is trying to do. Say that nature can be proved without God. I'm sorry, that's just wrong. Also, the implication is your grandpa is a rock. Here's a funny scripture. Jeremiah apparently knew about this. He said in Jeremiah 2:27-28, saying to a stalk, thou art my father, and to a stone thou hast brought me forth. Thanks to Dr. Kent Hovind for coming up with this hilarious analogy. It's classic idol worship, folks. Worshipping the stone. So who's your daddy, the god or the sponge? You gotta love it when Dr. Kent Hovind on his Whack an Atheist programs will pull out his little SpongeBob and ask them, is this your daddy? Here we have the arch evil being. Well done. Using evolution, we've taught children that they came from slime. So what is the purpose of evolution? Avowed atheist William Craig said that what evolution has done is destroy the idea of a first man. Evolution has always been about getting rid of God, getting him out of nature. If evolution doesn't need God, he probably doesn't exist. Okay, nature doesn't need God. So this is the heart of their theory. Here's an overview of why God didn't use evolution. You heard that, right? He says God used evolution. All these Christian evolutionists. Oxymoron, right? Ultimate irony. So, why follow the old Earth timetables of unguided random natural selection? Why would you do that? Why would you insist on that? If God did evolution, would he need all that time? And that timetable, that geological column, that's the heart of evolution. It's the natural selection, natural as in not supernatural. So if that's how long it takes naturally, how long would it take supernaturally? Okay, how about this is extremely cruel. How about that? Is God extremely cruel? Survival of the fittest is inherently cruel. How about wasteful? Is God wasteful? No, there's more efficient ways to create. God is powerful. He turns water into wine, right? He can walk on water. He just does things that are beyond us. He speaks and creation occurs, right? He's not following these evolutionary principles. And it doesn't even work with known laws of genetics. So how is God going to do this? It doesn't even work with known laws of genetics. There are limits to how much species can change. And there's insufficient proof in the fossil record of it. And it's statistically not possible for the time they've given to mutate enough genes to create complex life. So many problems. Why are we clinging to evolution? No, God did not use evolution. We don't need to go there. It's stupid. All right, here's a fun one. Husband and his wife having this little discussion here. The wife says, evolution is just the way God created. The guy says, you think he really needed all that time? And she says, I mean, isn't he patient? Gentleman says, I mean, isn't he powerful? Lady says, I suppose he did perform some rather rapid healings. Gentleman says, Amen. Right? Jesus didn't go up to somebody and say, you'll be healed in a million years because your posterity will, get rid of this defect you have. No, he can do it on the spot. So here we go. Who would win? On the one hand, we've got God, and the other we got evolution. So here's God. Heals people instantly, created Earth in 7 days, self-existent, omnipotent, tells a storm to stop, allows agency, raises the dead, omnipresent, omniscient, sacrifices for all, foresees the future, sends prophets. Versus evolution. What has evolution got to bring to this fight? Warm little pond, natural selection, survival of the fittest, maybe hominids, tax funding, crushes opposition, no purpose. God used evolution. No official position. Isn't it wonderful? Billions of years, impossibly small odds, on your own. Okay, here's a chance to destroy this evil. Here's Tolkien's ring, a hybrid of Christianity and evolution. Cast it into the fire, destroy it. No. The word of the Lord is clear. Animals only reproduce after their kind. 1 Corinthians 15:38 through 39. Genesis 1:11 through 12, 21, 24 through 28. Genesis 6:19 through 20. Genesis 7:14. How about the word of the Lord is clear, no death before the fall. Genesis 3:17 through 20 shows even plant life was impacted by the fall of man, and Eve was the mother of all living. How about Romans 8:21 through 22 speaks of the creation being cursed at the fall. 1 Corinthians 15:21 through 22, 26 and 45 speak of Adam as the first man and death as death entering the world at his fall. The word of the Lord is clear. Noah's flood covered the whole earth. Look at Genesis 6, Genesis 7, 1 Peter 3. These all tell it. Earth was baptized by immersion. Okay, sorry, that was not supposed to be in the non-denominational edition. If it was just a local flood, why didn't God just move? Why didn't God just tell Noah to move? Why did he have to take the animals? Would it have completed God's judgment on the whole world if it was just a local flood? Why would the Bible say all the mountains were covered in this event if it was just local? Why would the Bible say all flesh died if it was just local? How would it have been a symbol of Earth's baptism if it was just local? Couldn't God have used someone else to renew his covenant if it was just local? Why are there over 300 legends of a worldwide flood around the world involving only a few survivors? Why do hundreds of geological evidences around the world indicate major flooding at this time? How could a local flood last as long as the Bible describes? As in, it couldn't. The Ark in the Darkness documentary does a good job talking about that. Wouldn't recurring local floods have violated God's covenant not to flood the earth again? Folks, the word of the Lord is clear. Noah's flood covered the whole earth. Here we have scientists 200 years ago, proof that global flood wiped out dinos 4,500 years ago, versus wimpy scientists today, the local flood, millions of years. The word of the Lord is clear. Adam was the son of God. Genesis 3:20 says Eve was the mother of all living, and Luke 3 says Adam was the son of God. Here we have Luke finding out the true identity of his father as a monkey. The monkey man says, Adam, I am your father. No! How about this for a shirt? Apes belong in trees, not genealogies. Looking for apes in my family tree, not seeing it. Evolution is making everyone quit Christianity. This is fine. Days without Christians becoming atheists over evolution? 0. Here's Moses, just turns the Red Sea into blood. And the Pharaoh says, don't believe a word of it. It's from man-made climate change. Here we have a drowning man. In a faith crisis, I came from a monkey. The Christian evolutionist reaches out to help and says, God used evolution. Gives the man a 5, and the man drowns in his faith crisis. You're not helping, Christian evolutionists. God used evolution is not helping. Satan's apocalyptic strategies: lust, greed, evolution. Sad part is it's working. Here's Forrest Gump reflecting on Babylon's fall. 2030, I'm throwing that out there. Hopefully it falls tomorrow, next year in Jerusalem, right? 2030, and just like that, Babylon fell and evolution theory with it. And here we have the Christian evolutionists saying, it is a gift. Let us use evolution to build faith in God. Of course, you can't do this. We cannot wield it. You cannot wield it. None of us can. Here we have more about the Adam being the son of God in Luke 3. So you got this bored, Winnie the Pooh says, I'm a child of God by processes of evolution from lower species, says the Christian evolutionist. Versus the upgrade, Winnie the Pooh. I'm the direct offspring of God, right? Acts 17, I believe. We are the offspring of God. Here we have the Trojan horse of evolution. What's inside the horse? Atheism. And every school and their commies are welcoming it right on in. Make no mistake, folks, evolution is to get us to be atheists. You can't harmonize truth and falsehood. They say, silence, prophet, an evolution professor is talking. Here's Martin Luther, taking a stand against evolution, it's gonna hurt. Here we have Mr. Anakin being toyed with the Dark Master. Where can I learn more about evolution theory? Not from a laboratory. Here we have Willy Wonka. So you believe evolution can coexist with Christianity? Tell me more about your fantasy land. Let's try co-teaching evolution and Christianity, and you're going to lose both in Christians and intellectuals. Pick a side, folks. Let's at least offer creation science classes at universities. We say, would it kill you to allow both creation science and evolutionary science to be taught? Yes, it would, actually. Gandhi says, teach both creation and evolution and see who wins. Here we have a conversation between the former enemies, the dwarf and the elf here. It says, I never thought I'd teach in a school that allowed creation science. The other says, how about a school that reflects diversity of opinion? He says, I could do that. Here we have this crazed conspiracy dude with the evolution narrative. Nothing exploded, and then slime creatures emerged, which eventually became hominids, and then God put the spirit of Adam into a sufficiently evolved hominid. Woo, that's a tall tale. This is what the Christian evolutionists are selling. Explain human origins. How about Big Bang? How about monkeys? How about offspring of God? Luke 3:38, Acts 17:29. How dare you? Throws that guy out. Gentlemen, we are the offspring of God. Here we are. We must be in revival. We must be saints in revival. Drop a toy of evolution. I don't want to play with you anymore. Help expose corruption, folks. Keep calm and fight back against evolutionists. Proverbs 25:2 says, it is the glory of God to conceal a thing, but the honor of kings is to search out a matter. In other words, we've got to be involved in this fight, folks. Here's the school funds. They're all going to evolution. Just a few little drops. Intelligent design. Teach creation and evolution and see who wins. Typical American student. You mean evolution isn't the only option for human origins? Woo, that's it. Awesome. Thank you so much for joining me. Again, if you would like to get a copy of this, you can go to richardsonstudies.com. My name's Nate Richardson. And again, check out this book. This book has it all right here. So it's at minimal printing cost on Amazon, and you can get it for the document download on my website for free. So keep studying, hang in there, fight the good fight. And again, if you want to see my highlights on Dr. Hovind's legendary 7 seminars, non-denominational edition, there it is. So very happy to share this with you today. God bless.